So, hi everyone, welcome back to episode 8 of Served, where we bring you some insights and stories from across the kind of global food service sector. My name is Toby, I'm the head of innovation at Campler, and I'll be your host today. Our guest today is someone that we've been keen to get on the show for quite a while. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Catharine Barras, who is the COO of Global Strategic Accounts at Sodexo. Welcome, Catharine.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Real pleasure.
So today, I'm super excited to be here, and we're going to walk through your tips for success on the career ladder, what it really means to be a female leader in hospitality, some of the conversations kind of spilling over from our past episodes around global versus local food service, and obviously rounding off with your predictions for the future.
Mm.
Before we get started, I just want to give the readers and listeners an idea of your journey. And I've actually got your LinkedIn profile here.
Oh
So
God.
you started out in commercial services in the education sector before kind of becoming a catering manager. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. You then progressed on with Baxter Story to become an account director before moving over to Compass Group, director of operations Asia, regional director for Asia, ending up as a VP for the US and Canada for Compass Group, and then recently joining the ranks at Sodexo, as we said, as global COO for strategic accounts. My first question is obviously, do you ever sleep?
Yeah.
It's obviously been an incredible journey, and maybe just kind of talk us through a little bit about how you're feeling now with the new role and everything that's kind of come before.
Yes, I definitely sleep. I think it's really important. I'm excited. I'm excited to get back into the UK, to get back into the industry. There's been an awful lot of change, not least, I guess, COVID. But then in terms of the evolution of the industry over the past decade, when I've kind of been in and out of the UK. So I'm feeling excited. I've had a great first couple of months in this role with Sodexo and been able to reconnect to a lot of industry peers again. So it's excellent to be back. So thank you for asking.
And I'm conscious that you've been, as you say, globe trotting for the past few weeks, and we're really grateful to have you here today. So if we rewind slightly, and before we look at kind of your tips for success, food service and hospitality is obviously a sector that people kind of fall into and often, unfortunately, fall out of. It's clearly from looking at your resume here something that's been a career and a lifelong thing for you so far. So what kind of got you into it, and actually what's kept you here for so long?
Yeah, so I've got some roots in the industry through my family. So my grandmother, who is still with us, who celebrated her 98th birthday on Monday just gone, she was in hotels. She moved around, not quite as far-fetched as I've gone, but she moved around the northeast of England with my mum. And my mum really grew up in the industry as well. My mum then followed suit into food services. So she worked just before she left, and I won't mention any names, but for a competitor of ours at the moment. So it was really kind of in my blood when I was growing up, and food was also such a big part of our family, kind of remembering Sundays. We had quite a large extended family. Everyone would kind of gather around and spend time with one another. So that really got me the passion from my mum and my grandmother. That really got me enthused by the industry. My first job whilst I was at school/college was getting up at 5 in the morning on a Sunday to go in the glamour of kind of going to make sandwiches at a central production kitchen. And that was kind of my weekly role, and I guess a foot into the industry. I then got a job in a bar, kind of a student union bar, actually. So it wasn't your typical nighttime nightclub vibe. It was very much more kind of liaising with students, liaising with internal folks at the college, and kind of delivering events and such like on a daily basis. And I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with I think the people aspect more so, the ability to collaborate, to see something that goes from design to delivery in terms of events, and also kind of the business side of things. So the agility of making decisions around menus, working with chefs, and seeing customers be delighted. It really kind of got something going for me. Finishing college, I applied for a role. Never heard of food service, hadn't heard of Baxter Story. I saw a role as an assistant manager being advertised at one of their big flagship contracts up at the northeast, and then I applied for it, ended up getting it, and that was kind of my first step into food service. And it was just extraordinary. I mean, backstory at the time, if I'm allowed to mention, um, some of our competitors now. Just a fabulous, fabulous food company. Going into it was a really prestigious location, brand new build, designed as you would imagine, just very, very shiny, very exciting. And I remember the first time that I walked into the staff restaurant at this site, and the salad. It's a silly thing, but the salad bar, just in terms of the color and the presentation and just the care that had been taken in whoever had prepared that, displayed it, and was serving it, just really got me in terms of the creativity. And I just thought this is really cool. I was 24 at the time, was working with chefs. I had a great team around me, a team of really passionate people from the northeast of England, and we were kind of delivering and creating on a daily basis. So that was kind of my first foot in the door.
You are a a female leader in the hospitality sector, possibly bringing with you a lot of experience from your career of some of the challenges, the ups and the downs of what that can bring. I read recently that Sodexo has up to around, I think, 40% of kind of C-level positions held by females, which I think is absolutely amazing. I just wondered, what has your experience been like as kind of becoming that female leader in the space? And do you think the industry, could do more potentially to support other female leaders?
It's a good question, and my personal experience probably, isn't representative of clearly everyone's experience. I probably by chance have had more male leadership in my career than female, certainly than female, and equally more male mentorship and sponsorship. It was interesting going over to Asia, where it was, you could see it, you could absolutely feel it, that there would be many occasions where, certainly in some countries in that side of the world, just from a pure cultural point of view, that you would be the only female in that room, and you did have to work a little bit harder to have a voice and get the respect to support and make change. But again, I don't feel that, and that would probably be driven through Compass as an organization, in terms of I never felt it was a barrier until I went to the US. And US, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, it was probably the only time, and I'm sure we'll touch upon it again, that I've ever gone into a role and kind of looked around me, and it, really felt that it was more male dominated. In particular, kind of working across the FM and food service sector, there was a lot of legacy leaders in there. Just happened to be great leaders. Compass off phenomenal over in the US, but you did start to kind of just observe and really consider how far could you go being based over there when it is so heavily male dominated. And that was probably the only change. And I remember discussing it with a mentor slash coach of mine that was working, a female that was working in Compass at the time. And she said, well, change it. Why don't you try and change it? And that was probably the only time that I thought that I'm not going to be able to do it. It's too much of a big lift. There's too much of a cultural shift that would need to be made. And again, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I just knew at that point that there would probably be more to ceiling that side of the world. So I think it really, to answer your question, I haven't necessarily felt hindered at all in my journey. And I haven't actually met too many people. So and again, not being representative of clearly there will everyone has their own story and their own journey. I do feel that it's incumbent upon all companies to really retain and elevate that approach to diversity. So Sodexo do it particularly well. We have a very, very diverse leadership team, not only gender based, but we have representation from a lot of great and diverse leaders. And it does really help, because the old cliche term of you've got to see it, it's true. If you don't see it, hence my experience in the US, it does, perhaps not directly, but certainly unconsciously and maybe consciously, impact your confidence and your ambition in terms of where you think you can get to. So I think we all have to do our part, the men included, but to continue to champion for different backgrounds in different roles in different organizations, if that answers your question.
Just to kind of make it super tangible for our listeners, like, is there any advice or steps that you think an aspiring kind of female leader could take, or any leader for that sake, coming into the industry right now?
Have a really strong network of like-minded or not necessarily like-minded, but individuals that you feel have either gone on that journey or stepping towards that journey, because you can really lift each other up and you can give each other confidence and you can share knowledge and you can make other connections for people as well. It had a huge impact on where I am to date in terms of my network and my ability to lean on others in the industry and outside of the industry, take feedback and keep that continuous support when it is, you go through challenging times. So just build as strong a network as you can and continue to lean on that network.
You mentioned also like coaches and like mentors and things like that. It definitely leans into the network point.
Absolutely.
Like, how vital have those been for you on your
Unbelievably so. At every step, in every role, in every region that I've worked, having, I would say, probably multiple sponsors along the way, and people, by that I mean individuals within the organization that would spot something inside of you and give you an opportunity to move potentially into a stretch project, give you the space to grow and give you the space to demonstrate your capabilities and what you can bring, and then I guess recommend you for other roles. That's been a pretty much recurring theme throughout my career. And also one or two mentors along the way. I think the important part of mentorship, and we use the term a lot, and it should not be underplayed, the importance of mentors, but you've kind of got to know what you want from someone. It's not just a chat, and it's not the same as a sponsor in terms of, although of course they can help open doors and they can advise, but it was very much, I found, useful in terms of when I was going through something particularly difficult or challenging. So it almost became like a coaching mentor relationship for me. So a couple of really strong coaches and mentors along the way, but very, very heavily impacted and influenced by the sponsorship that I've had throughout my career to date.
Amazing. And I think like the thing that I'm interested in kind of, and again, for our listeners, like looking from the outside into these bigger organizations is like, is the sponsorship something that's a formal process within, say, a Compass or a Sodexo or a larger caterer, or is it something that happens a little bit more organically?
I mean, my journey was definitely organic. However, it's absolutely remiss of us to think that there isn't a discussion at a leadership level in large organizations to encourage sponsorship as part of the talent retention and growth process. Um,
So I think just to round off, I guess the key takeaways there are find mentors, but really understand what you want from them. In doing so, making their role clear to them. Lean on them, and don't be afraid to lean on them when things do get tough. And then I guess with the sponsorship piece, it's probably about putting your name in the hat, like put yourself in the space where the opportunities are, and in doing so, you'll be able to kind of propel yourself up these organizations, which
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't put your hand up, it's you're never going to be recognized. So you've got to take ownership of that yourself, and then be confident that you've got people around you that'll identify you as someone that's going to progress.
absolutely. So just to kind of move on slightly in the discussion, because there's some really really interesting things that I'd like to get to, and I'd love to get your replies to some of the things that we've had in the last episode. So starting to think about your journey from like regional player, Baxter Story, through to some of these global players with Compass and Sodexo currently. What have you found are some of the key differences between a regional caterer and a kind of a global M provider? Is there anything that you think one does better than the other? And yeah, any insights you can offer around that?
I wouldn't say better. I think it's a different approach. I mean, fundamentally, we're all driven by amazing people with that passion for food and service. It doesn't necessarily matter where you play or how you play. And again, it's all about the people and the players. And I've worked across most regions now and been based and operated in a number of countries. And the universal part of our industry is having the right people with the right passion, with the right ambition. And that is consistent, no matter which organization you work within. I think in terms of In terms of some of the differences, I mean, the game changes slightly in terms of a regional, and when I say regional, covering a continent um, or at a global level, because you've got to have that ability to keep the adaptability and the agility of a local, potentially country-based organization, but be able to scale and grow that for clients that want that global partnership. I think also from an impact point of view, I mean, we know, and probably could talk about this all day, the impact that our industry can have in terms of people's lives, careers, the planet, local communities, it just becomes so much bigger and so much more important. So, in terms of the responsibility, social responsibility of organizations, that has to be, and it absolutely must be front and center, because the impact that companies can have in some of the developing countries is absolutely significant. I remember when they first went to India with Compass, and they were really derived from food service, really. And as of course Sodexo and all of the wider food service providers now in India will continue to do, they were driving the industry from inside corporate buildings, because and tolerance and compliance and quality, because the high street was kind of emerging and didn't really exist. So you can have such an impact, locally, of course, but it just becomes tenfold when you move into a regional and global business and partnership, in particular when you're partnered with some of the most forward-thinking clients in the world.
So I think you mentioned some of the key kind of challenges that I would see outwardly looking into running global contracts. I've certainly never run one. I know you've run plenty. Things like time zones, languages, cross-border teams, managing large groups of people, certainly kind of consistency versus innovation or consistency with innovation. I think what our listeners would be really interested to understand is what actually kind of makes success in these global contracts and what are the key ingredients.
I think it starts with aligning with the strategy and embedding yourself as much into the culture of the organization, the client organization, as you can, and trying to understand what they're trying to achieve from their food service or certainly FM partnership. My belief and I guess what's worked historically is food is never going to be a one size fits all. So trying to have a cookie cutter approach to food service under the umbrella of a global contract is just never going to work. I think where organizations such as Sodexo and others have done particularly well is worked with the countries to understand and to elevate the best version of what that country can bring to the table for the client. Innovation means very different things in different countries. So making sure that we harness whatever that local innovation is and whatever is progressing, back to the India point, whatever is progressing the organization, the service within that country is really important. And then I mean, obviously, clearly cross-sharing where possible. Working with the clients in terms of education around this. This is the best version of food service that we can deliver to you. This is our version of continuous improvement, and this is going to get you to the point of where you want to be in terms of a best-in-class food service program. I mean, the communication part and the interface with the countries is absolutely key. I mean, say when I was running global accounts, the amount of conversations that I would have was just surpasses anything else that I've ever done in terms of working. You're almost like a bit of a conduit between the big global organization, the countries, the client, bringing everyone together to deliver this um, ideally, again, best in class food program, but it doesn't work without the structure and the global governance. And I know that's not a sexy term, but it is so critical to, however you frame success, what success looks like in these organizations, because you've got to be able to pull the best out of the countries, work with the countries. You've got to be able to wrap it up in terms of storytelling with the client, education to the client and back into the organization. You've got to build that business case with that kind of global layer of data, and then have that communication to demonstrate the value of kind of global partnership. So that's worked well. It's not easy to achieve. It's very, again, the people word will come up a lot in this conversation. It very much hinges on having the right people with the right approach, the right attitude, the right partnering ability, because to your point, your clients, the matrix, the web of people that you have to work with and converse with and convince and influence just goes 100-fold when you move out of a country. So, but when it works, the impact that you can have surpasses anything that you can do on a country level.
There's so much in that. And I think just to kind of bounce back what I'm hearing, it's kind of the first point is understand what success is. And that goes beyond this conversation. I think that's a great observation. Understand what the client wants to achieve from the partnership. Then kind of being almost forward deployed, almost kind of in that gray zone between, are you part of the global, say Sodexo, for example, organization? Are you part of the client org? And really understanding their culture. I love the point around not trying to kind of serve up a standardized offer across countries. I think the outward perception is sometimes that these larger caterers don't have flexibility. So I think that's like really interesting to see. And then really kind of measuring that impact and being great at communicating it on the back end. And I guess my question leans a little bit selfishly from coming from a tech standpoint, but how important is technology in doing that? And what kind of tools do you use, if you're allowed to?
No, absolutely. I think it's always been important. I think in terms of kind of the back office part of the service, the data that we can collect, because has always been important, but it is becoming more and more important, and it is again absolutely critical in terms of even if it's a multi-country or a global partnership, because you cannot see, or you can't see what's going on the majority of the time. You have to be able to rely on something that is tangible when you're building business cases or when you're asking clients for support in whatever you need them to support with. So it has always been important, and technology obviously is clearly the enabler to improving the data sets that we have. I think it's really interesting over the last couple of years, especially in our industry, the growth, and you guys are certainly part of that journey of customer facing technology to have global scale. So, whereas food to me, it's very personal, and particular in some regions needs to be very authentic. The consistent theme is the passion of our teams, but having the ability to have technology as a thread through most, if not all, of the countries, and delivering a more consistent user experience is something that clients are absolutely looking for at the moment. And we've developed our own app, everyday app, that we've deployed in a number of different countries, which is having some success. It's again improving the data sets that we're getting, allowing for that agility and decision making as well. And I guess expediting decision making when we're working with clients, because what used to be hey, let's test something for 3 months and get the customer feedback, is no, you've got real tangible information and data now to go that this is not working, we need to make a change, and then you can get almost instant feedback as to the success of something um, based on that technology. And interestingly, it's helping us to, and I'm sure we'll come on to talk about it, but to evolve and adapt to new ways of working. Because historically in our industry, we've all seen it. You would have a huge building with 5,000-6,000 people in there. There would be a huge staff restaurant. It would be quite dated. It would open from 8 till 2, and you can kind of go on in terms of all the traditional ways of serving food within a building. I think what technology has allowed us to do is to again really flex how we deliver that service to a client. So that will mean everything from offsite production and management of that offsite production and just in time deliveries. That will mean having the ability to flex services on shoulder days, Mondays and Fridays, closing some of these staff restaurants that just are not getting the traffic on those days, and then flipping to a technology delivered service where our customers can go online and order what they want and use apps and have it delivered to their desks. It's also supporting with younger generations coming into the workplace, and they're not really being a hard line anymore between work and home. And if you want a coffee at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, or you want a snack at 7 at night, you've got the ability to, if you want to, provide that service without having those kind of fixed operations. So it is absolutely critical and pivotal, and it will continue to evolve and probably drive changes as the industry evolves.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things that I was actually explaining to a new colleague who wasn't so familiar with the sector recently is, for me personally, food waste. And when you look at some of the conditions that you mentioned, you've got unpredictable demand created by flexible working, contrasted with the need to have a potentially a service period that runs from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. With a service style which is very much lay it up and hope that someone buys it historically. And I think that just creates this breeding ground for kind of inefficiency operationally and financially, and obviously a lot of food waste on the back of that. And what we find quite interesting is that introducing it to these new colleagues who aren't from the sector, it's not seen. If that was happening on the high street, they would be absolute outraged. But because it's inside offices, because it's behind closed doors, and quite often, and maybe this is slightly controversial, as much as you've got clients who really want to care for the planet, if something runs out, it's not seen as a great thing. So you've got masses of food going to waste, and I think if there was more visibility of it, there would definitely be more controls. But technology really providing the solution there, both in terms of forecasting how many people are going to be in, what's the weather doing, how much do we need to produce, and as you mentioned quite rightly, kind of making sure that that is delivered as efficiently as possible, whether that's on-demand production, on-site, off-site, delivery in, all of those kind of things.
Well, I think, and again, back to the food waste point, if the industry evolves as we think it may, in terms of the enhanced need for customization, and again the different ways to deliver, then based on technology and on demand, it will naturally have a positive impact on food waste as well. And it's really interesting, the technology versus experience side of things as well, because the client that I was working with over in America, which is, fabulous client, wonderful food program, typically historically very visual, very counter driven, working through plans for a new location in the States where they want their, now whether they could do this or not, I don't know, but the vision is to have a completely dark kitchen operated on demand food service, which will completely revolutionize it, in particular if it can be done at scale, traditional staff dining.
Yeah, and it's I've got a strong personal connection to this because actually on the back of COVID, I tried to do exactly the same thing with a large kind of blue chip banking client in the city here, where we looked at this huge outdated restaurant that we had and thought, actually, why don't we turn this floor into kind of collaboration space, more of a lounge, somewhere that people can come and spend longer periods of time, and everything, maintain the kitchen, everything can be ordered through kiosks or apps. QR codes on the table. Whilst we didn't demolish the restaurant, we did move a lot closer to that in removing all of the EPOS, removing a lot of the displayed food. And what was really interesting is whilst we had some success with it, the kind of removal of that human contact was kind of a key source of feedback from both the client and the customers themselves. If you're sitting there at a desk all day looking at a screen, actually coming down and having a chat with the barista, having a chat with the chef, having that 5 minutes away from screen time was something that they really, really valued. And it was a kind of a key learning for me, but I definitely agree that it is the way the world is going. But being clever with it in combining technology and people. I think Ben Noah had a great quote that was kind of powered by people, enabled by technology,
Absolutely.
which I really like.
And it has to be complementary. I mean, technology, well, never say never, but technology, it shouldn't replace, and it can't replace the experience you get and how people make you feel. And if organizations are trying, mandating and trying and encouraging people to come back into the office, it is that, again, that social connection and that collaboration and that feeling like a building's alive, which I don't think technology can deliver, certainly on its own. But there is an absolute case for enhancing services and our services with technology, as we've just discussed, in terms of how we get food to our customers, and how we use data to make better decisions in terms of how we operate the service and enhance their experience with what we do.
Absolutely. And I was lucky enough to have a little play around with the Sodexo app and talk to some of the product guys in your org recently. And I think what they've done is really, really cool. And I kind of can't wait to see how that evolves. We're going to backtrack slightly, only because I think we had a great conversation around kind of global versus local or regional. And I know we had Chris Stern, kind of a friend and colleague on the podcast recently, talking about the advantages that global providers once offered, being slightly diminished in the current era. And I really just wanted to get your take on it, having worked with Baxter Story as a kind of a specialist regional player, and now also with Compass and Sodexo. What's your take on global versus local?
Well, first of all, Chris is a great guy. I've worked with Chris on a couple of occasions as well, and his experience and contacts and knowledge of the industry, it would be very hard to surpass. So I think he absolutely has, a valid opinion. I think for us, it's kind of really, again, depends on what the client wants to do and the client strategy. And our view is that we will co-create and adapt, and we can, because we have that, the geographical presence to be able to do so, and we can support clients and partners, in whichever way they want to go to market. So I don't think it's right necessarily to have a strong opinion, for me to have a strong opinion on the way that the industry should go to market. I think again, it very much depends on the client and what the client wants to do, and again, what success looks like for the client. I think, global contracts have benefits, and there are certainly clients that are still seeking that. And sometimes global doesn't mean global; it can mean multi-region and such like. But I think in terms of value and economies of scale and that consistency and framework that we just discussed earlier are absolutely important in terms of how some clients are looking to partner on food services. I think generally you also see value in terms of how the account is managed, how risk is managed depending on the sector and the client, quality, sustainability, as we've mentioned there, which is absolutely critical, and innovation as well, kind of sharing best practice and driving up standards from one country to the next. I think all of that can be achieved within the global framework. And there are clients that we work with, there are clients that other companies work with that have seen some real success there with their approach to global, because it doesn't mean, to our earlier conversation, that it is a cookie cutter. This is what you buy, so this is what we're going to give you in every single country. We should have the ability, that helicopter approach of view, to again draw out the best of the regions, the best of the country, and whether that is from a food point of view, whether that is innovation, whether that's piloting or proof of concept. And I think as long as there's enough flexibility, and again, you've got the right people in that global framework, then it can be deployed really well, and you can still maintain that level of engagement for your global, your regional, and your country-based clients at a local level with the integration of the local teams. So I think that there are huge benefits for buying global, but again, it is very, very dependent on the client, on the sector. And it's interesting coming into Sodexo, where we work across quite a number of sectors and with a number of clients. And what we're seeing in sometimes in the finance and tech space is that the focus, and this is representative to most companies now, but the focus is far more amplified on the employee attraction, the retention, food and hospitality seen as an amenity and a real draw back into the office environment. It's fundamental from when we're kind of co-creating and building design, and it's seen as a real intrinsic part of almost the heartbeat of the organization. And then you go across to your life sciences clients, which again, the war for talent is across every industry, but the focus on value, on safety, on compliance, governance, quality, because the tasks that they're performing on site are hinged on all of those activities. So having a trusted partner regionally or globally that can manage the risk and give them the confidence that they can manage a good service, and help them to achieve their goals is extraordinarily important. And then you've got your manufacturing clients again that are probably a little bit more cost driven. But I had a recent conversation with a client from one of our manufacturing partnerships, and they are now realizing that they lost a lot of talent coming out of COVID. They're finding it very difficult to attract that talent based on a traditional manufacturing approach. So they're really looking again at us, at, how can you help me drive a successful employee value proposition? It's not going to be the reason that people join companies, but it is a part of why they're interested, a part of the culture, and a part of why they stay. So again, it really is incumbent upon us in the industry and as a partner to work with the client and help them to achieve their vision and their strategy.
I think the key thing I'm taking away here, which is really fascinating, is that a caterer or a food service provider particularly if they're also delivering like the total sort of facilities piece. They're so much more than a food service provider. You
Absolutely.
mentioned design, whether that's a new office, you're almost an employee experience consultant and
Absolutely.
somebody that can help draw people back into the office. It's about compliance, maybe it's financially driven. And it's really, really interesting, I think, because when you outwardly look into it, you'd say, oh, you just cook the food, which is
But
absolutely not
yeah,
true.
but I mean, the hospitality industry, whether that be food or hotels or any sort of services, our business fails if we don't attract and retain customers. So the knowledge and the approach to our industry is very, very much applicable and transferable into the workplace. And interestingly, actually, we are doing a little bit of work with, I won't mention names, but a very well-known hotelier in terms of how do we co-create the workplace experience with one of our global clients. And we go in, we set standards, we think that everything's okay. And no, we've got to continuously agitate, continuously drive forward improvements. And how do we take that almost amenity, the 1% margins of continuous improvement that hoteliers expect from their teams and their design and their business into the workplace. So it's absolutely fascinating.
It is. And I think one of the key trends, and actually a nice segue into my final couple of questions, one of the key trends that I'm finding really interesting is the kind of hotel lobby effect on offices. So actually, reinventing the reception so that it's not this dead space. It's actually
Mm.
filled with hospitality, potentially music, artwork. It's even potentially inviting the public in to experience that and bringing them closer to these organizations, making them appear a little bit less scary as well.
Well, but I think it's just, and again, just to not to dwell on the point, but we've been doing a piece of work with another client in life sciences that you would walk into the building. I mean, they've got a public-facing restaurant. They've got the largest corporate or in office vertical farm. They've got gyms. They've got wellness facilities. They have a concierge service, and all of all of that was co-created with us, but obviously driven by the client to reduce stress on their employees, whether that be out of office or in office, make them feel part of a community, and aid their productivity. It kind of all forms part of the overall workplace experience, but it's so important that you've got these, and they're not really just little touches. You've got these thoughtful additions to someone's day.
No, it's so good though. Honestly, like there's so much value in this.
Mm.
One of the final topics that we want to cover is kind of innovation and your predictions for the future. But before we go on to that, I'd be really keen, if I may, to understand how your org or any of the organizations that you've worked with before were starting to use AI in the business and what the kind of applications or what stage of the process you were at.
Yeah. So we've definitely started the journey. I guess it'll be interesting for our industry in particular to really get a hold of AI and see the kind of any tangible impacts that it can make. But in terms of what we're doing at the moment, there's a lot of investment in process and certainly back of house in terms of effective scheduling, team scheduling for our clients. In terms of menu AI, so using, for example, a chef will be able to go into their kitchen and look at what ingredients they've got, and AI. We're building a program so that AI can help them to create a recipe, to manage production volume, as we've mentioned there, which will of course aid food waste and make sure that we've got the right product in the right place at the right time. The data that we're able to get again is certainly going to be enhanced, but at the moment we're kind of at almost a pilot stage, so we're testing different tools in different markets, but it is typically at the moment around the back of house, taking away a routine, but tasks that our teams have to do that take them away from spending time with the customer and the client. So that is where our focus is going to be. Who knows, in the future we have an in-house team that are actually working on this. So I'm sure that they will continue to come up with innovation and ideas for us to continuously evolve and improve the business.
It's amazing to see that it's being invested in at such a high level, and I think
Mm.
naturally, as you'll know, we're kind of also going into our own projects around the subject. And one of the points you made there around the kind of the AI sous chef, that kind of co-pilot style
Yeah.
application, I think is really interesting. And where we've been discussing that with chefs informally, what's really interesting for us is it's not black and white. A chef one day might have the time to create a recipe from scratch. The next day they might not. They might have a banquet for 200 people on.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's really kind of there when you need it as a support, and but also, as you mentioned, kind of taking away the need to analyze the massive data that you've got and really just getting straight to the answers, I think is another exciting possibility.
I mean, the hope is it absolutely complements the creativity and culinary skill set of the chefs. I think the our industry, again, my belief is that our industry will be around for generations to come in terms of that hospitality, that people, that social interaction, and that skill side of things. I think it is absolutely again incumbent on us all in our industry, and not just in food service but in hospitality, to continue to develop the culinary skills, to bring on young chefs, to watch them grow in the industry, and to complement that with AI is where I think it's going to go. Again, giving them more time to be creative, to spend time with customers, to spend time with their team, and not necessarily have to always worry so much about the paper side of things. I think is where the benefits are really going to be short term. Long term, who knows? It's exciting.
Absolutely. I think it will definitely make it more attractive as a sector, because
Mm.
the looking after people side is something that's inherent to a lot of us, and it's obviously extremely rewarding and enjoyable. As you say, just without maybe some of those manual tasks, or with a little bit of a helping hand when you do need it, which I think, yeah, it can only be positive for the sector. And then, as you say, longer term, we probably don't even have names for the kind of things that will be going on in the next 2, 3 years. So I think that's really exciting. Maybe just as a final question, then, we're sitting here. It's 10 years time. We're in 2035. What do you think customers are doing or not doing, and what do you think team members are doing or not doing versus today, as a final question?
So, in terms of, gosh, looking into the future, it's interesting because I mean we make things and serve things that directly impact the well-being of people, people's bodies, people's minds, the planet. So it's a continuous thought train to look into the future and to try and remain relevant as humans might change. I think from a workplace and in our particular industry point of view, I know it's a bit of a buzz term at the moment, but with kind of Gen Z coming through with the workplace design, and like I said earlier, that kind of blended approach to how people want to work will be interesting, and how we remain again relevant to that. There is this, it's not really a future trend, but it's kind of an now trend of this kind of always on and this need for convenience and instant gratification. So how do we as an industry continue to move not necessarily away, but where appropriate, and evolve away from that traditional way of serving food within buildings? I think the customization piece, and just the point you were talking about around technology enabling that, is people want what they want when they want it, and they can go out at any point, depending on where they are, but largely at any point, and pretty much get what they want when they want it. And perhaps cost won't be such a focus, but it's how do we, based on our historical, very quite fixed model, provide that customization. It's kind of well discussed in our industry, and in general, in AI driven as well, that people are becoming more and more aware and more in touch with their health, and certainly more in touch with nutrition and functionality of food. So, and everyone's different, every human body's different. So as that increases, and the need for customization on top of that increases again, how do we provide that? I don't have any of the answer. The other things that are certainly thoughts and conversation points and around the coffee machine at work these days. I think, to your point, AI is going to be really interesting, and how that changes or again evolves how we work with clients. So what becomes value? What does that actually mean to clients versus the traditional experiential led part of hospitality? So integrating that and continuing to be relevant in that space. And I think being slightly more in the clouds a little bit, but in terms of, we know that from a food source point of view, the population continues to grow to a point globally. Investment in medicines and personalized medicines and the effectiveness of those seem to be improving. So will that lead to an aging and growing population? We know that the current, well, we don't know, I guess we know anything, but the belief in the data is telling us that the current global food sources are not sustainable. So how and where are those food sources going to come from? So will that be manufactured food sources, which I know there is a lot of comment and potentially negative views on, or constructively negative views on at the moment? Are there other organic sources that we need to look at? Because we need to, we've got to have some foresight and insight into that, because humans are always going to be able to, need to take in nutrition, and hopefully one day it doesn't get to the kind of the space packed food and you lose that social part of it. So it's kind of, keeping abreast of all of that to make sure that that our industry is sustainable, and food remains a core part of the human interaction for generations to come. And I think it's really exciting from my side to be in more of the operational side, really exciting from your side to be in the technology, and how the two combine in our industry. It will shape the future. I mean, it'll shape the future of food, and workplace experience. And it's a really exciting journey to be on.
Absolutely. And I think just as a final comment, what I took away from that was actually as an organization like yours, and as a leader in that organization, you're probably accounting for a decent percentage of the meals served on this planet daily, or certainly not a negligible percentage. So really looking at that core piece around farming and sustainability and food source is pretty central to your, I guess, your future strategy and survival. Looking back, actually, at something you said earlier around going into those new markets in places like India and really being able to influence things. Really, what you do next, and as you mentioned quite politely, with a company like us, but what you do next will shape where the rest of us go, what we eat, and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that impact and that responsibility is a huge thing, and probably a great kind of place to end the episode. But look,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. This has been super insightful. We've gone through everything from career advice to AI to personalized nutrition. And yeah, just thanks for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.